a little bit about design, and when it's good, it just works.
Yes.
And it's this interesting, characteristic of the medium that we work in, that when we really, really nailed a solution, nobody says anything. Like, this was so
So true.
hard. Yeah, it was so hard for me to learn this as a young interaction designer. But the best review I had that I could possibly have was when I would show the work to somebody and there would be no debate. And generally, when you have that review, they just look at it and they kind of look at you as, well, of course that's how we would do it. How else could we do it? Like, you must be an idiot thinking that this is a breakthrough, when in fact you know that you've spent countless hours arriving at this, right? So when you get something like really narrowed down to the simplest expression, it's only then that it becomes obvious to everyone else, right? And so
Yes.
it's this really unusual dynamic of being a creator in this medium, that the most successful, useful things you'll come up with will be the things that everybody will take for granted. And you have to learn how to be okay with that. And I think that also is partly responsible for this dynamic. We live and work in the most important cultural medium of our time, and yet none of us can name a famous UI designer. If we were asked, who would you put on the cover of Time magazine as the most important software designer, none of us would know who that person is, even though the software that we use every day is probably the most influential thing in the modern world. And it's such a weird medium that it has this sort of impact. And even the people working in the industry, much less the people consuming these products, have no idea who's behind it. There's zero attribution, which I also think is a big part of why it's been so hard to recruit more people into software design. Like, people just don't realize it's a profession. And when my kids were going through high school and it was a hiring manager at Pinterest, it was clear to me that we just had this massive talent shortage. And so I was on this thing for a while, and I still am, about trying to basically activate kids at high school to help them understand that this was a career path that was available to them. And in the context of that, I went and talked at a couple of high schools and went to the career center and just told them about my career and what the profession was like. And I'd look at these labor demand curves, talk about how many designers we have relative to how many engineers, and then you could say, well, engineering's growing at this. We need at least one designer per 10 engineers. That means we need this many designers. There's no good estimates of how many we have, but when you talk to people in the profession, we have maybe a quarter of how many we need, which means there's this huge demand for jobs. Now let me show you the median income by these different career levels around the country. Lo and behold, a junior designer starting out in a city like St. Louis, Missouri, is almost at the median income for a family of four. When parents would see that, their jaws would drop. And then you show stuff like, oh no, the median income for a creative director in a major market like San Francisco is $300,000 a year, not including equity and benefits. And people would just be, what? Like, what? Like, how? Like, how does that even work? And then there was this amazing moment where the parents were like, wow, my kid could go do that. My kid who's interested in art and self-expression and doesn't want to be a coder, like, there's a path for them to also have a successful, lucrative career in tech. And then you would see the kids would just be so relieved. I think we're starting to get over this, but for a long time, I think all the engineers thought the designers were a bunch of art school dropouts that sat in the corner, and wore a lot of black. And now, I mean, I can go to any company in Silicon Valley, and most of them, at some point, they'll admit that design is probably the single most critical talent constraint on their company. And it reminds me very much of what's happening in Hollywood. If you talk to people in Hollywood, they're like, look, we could easily make more big budget, great movies every year. We can easily make more. The problem's not making the movie. The problem is we don't have that many good scripts. The problem for entertainment is there's not enough good writers. And the problem with software and technology is there's not enough great designers. I haven't personally figured out how to crack that nut because, again, there's just sort of this weird attribution. Like, people don't realize it's a profession you can go into. And I think that's starting to change slowly, but not nearly fast enough.